It's the PGN Par 4 on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I'm Matt Gajtka, along with Zac Weiss, bringing you four topics from the golf world, both local and also worldwide. The big story, though, for us, Zac, over the past week was our biggest endeavor yet at Pittsburgh Golf Now. Talking about, of course, the U.S. Amateur at Oakmont. And boy, was that ever enjoyable to get on the property there at one of America's greatest courses, one of the world's greatest courses. But also, Zac, to experience an event that I had never been at live, and I rarely watched it, in fact. I watched the final a couple of years ago, actually last year at Bandon Dunes in Oregon. I watched it a couple of years ago, too. I remember way back when, this will age me a little bit for our audience, but when Tiger Woods was winning 3 in a row, I watched a little bit of that as well, just because he moved the needle so much even before he turned pro. But James Piot is your amateur champion. He raises the Havemeyer Trophy on Sunday evening at Oakmont after a 36-hole final win over Austin Greaser of suburban Dayton. James Piot is the first Michigan native to win the U.S. Amateur, also the first Big Ten competitor to win the U.S. Amateur since John Cook, back in the 80s. So it had been a while. Strike one for cold weather golfers everywhere, as I put it in my recap on the website. Zac, your impressions of the U.S. Amateur, though, because I feel like, first and foremost, it's an underappreciated event. Like I said, I'm a big golf fan, but I don't watch much of this event year in and year out. And there were some good crowds over the weekend, but I just feel like overall it was a little underexposed in the Pittsburgh market. And I kept telling people all week, come on out to Oakmont. It's a $27 day pass. You can walk around. You walk in the fairways behind the players. It's rather remarkable. It's so intimate. You're right on top of things. And I was just blown away by the access we got, not even as media members, but just as fans of the game. So that was terrific. And regardless of whether you know the players well going in or you don't, I think it's still an event that should have a higher standing in the sport. What say you after experiencing it firsthand?
Well, certainly, and not to belittle the fact that we're not going to get to go back to Oakmont for another 4 years, at least the fan is not going to be able to do so. So really provides a very, very unique opportunity for a very, very fantastic price point. And unfortunately, luck of the draw goes up against kind of that middle of the week where you have a Steelers preseason game. And of course, the Pirates aren't really much of
I think it's still an event that should have a higher standing.
But beyond that, I mean, the way that things were, I mean, yes, you didn't as a fan get to go Monday or Tuesday. And a lot of that came down to it wasn't necessarily shot making, it was were you on the right side of the draw with the ultimate variable of the week, which was Mother Nature, which reared its ugly head early and reared its ugly head often throughout the entire week. But when the dust settled, I mean, what's so great about this tournament is the unpredictable nature of it. And you have amateurs that come from different walks of life, different backgrounds, different training, different spots in their game, and it just is ironic. It's interesting to see who rose to the top, and maybe it was some names that people weren't necessarily expecting to do so. And I think that's what makes this fun. It's the unpredictability of it. And for the fans, 99% of those players are probably names that you really haven't heard of. And of course, with us, we're chasing a lot of the local angles, which naturally didn't necessarily shape up as much as you'd like to, of course, with the exception being Mark Gibbs, who got the medalist honors for stroke play, which congratulations to him for that. But ultimately, his undoing was those last few holes in that round of 64, once match play came to be. But you said it yourself, literally, the bathrooms in the clubhouse had newspapers all over it. I think you were a kid in a candy shop on Monday just trying to go through the clubhouse and see the different sites, and even we got a chance to meet an acquaintance that you knew that kind of gave more of a history lesson to both of us on Friday. So it was really, really interesting this whole week. You're on top of the players. You and I got a picture next to the church pews. As a media member myself, if I walked anywhere inside that fairway at a PGA Tour stop, I get yelled at. And my credential may or may not get revoked. It might have been a Masters kind of a situation. So from that aspect, it's kind of cool to see it, and you're a lot more privy to the conversations that these players and these caddies are having with each other. And just getting a chance to see that makes you more invested as a person just that enjoys the sport. And really, I think that's what you're looking for. In terms of thank yous, obviously, thank you to Brian DePascal for the USGA for credentialing 4 of us both of us, Mike and Alex, which for a site that's in its second year is we're all very, very thankful for that. Of course, he had a couple of assistants that helped him throughout the week that were immensely helpful. Of course, Stu Francis with the USGA was integral. He was at a lot of times when you have a president, there's sometimes the figurehead, but he was just as invested as the fans were, walking all 36 and making the quick change to put on the blazer at the end for the ceremony. But all the USGA brass were very, very lively, very, very invested in the outcome and telling the stories of all of the competitors throughout the week. So thank you to all the USGA. Thank you, of course, to Mike for his fantastic photography and Alex for his eye for the story throughout the week. And of course, thanks to you all, the readers. I mean, this was a fantastic traffic week for all of us. I'm sure Matt has more of that information, but for universities to be tweeting, for politicians to be tweeting articles, and for you yourselves to be interacting with us on a basis we haven't necessarily had with as much regularity has been fantastic, and the feedback has been welcome as well too, and we welcome more feedback moving forward as well. So a fantastic experience, a fantastic learning experience, and speaking for Matt, I'm sure we're excited to take this momentum and continue rolling forward.
Absolutely. And you said it there. You rattled off all the names I wanted to get to. Also wanted to thank Alan Saunders for believing in this project from the beginning. He helped me get it off the ground with help from Joe Steigerwald as well on the back end of things. So the reason that Pittsburgh Golf Now is able to showcase, for instance, Mike's photography first and foremost, as well as it is because of Joe and Alan. And as Alan put it, after looking at our analytics from last weekend, Sunday alone would have been our third best month at Pittsburgh Golf Now in about 15 months of existence. And we were just grateful for the opportunity. And unlike the U.S. Open, Zach, 5 years ago, which we both covered for different outlets, we got to be in the clubhouse too, just because there was no need for a huge media tent like there is at the U.S. Open when you have hundreds, maybe even thousands of media members. Hard to tell. On a given day, though, it's pretty jam-packed in there. As for us who were covering the event, it was a little bit over a dozen, I would say, of folks who made their way in and got to experience not just the course itself, as the members do, without grandstands, without all the other limitations that come with the grandness of the event of the U.S. Open. So it was the best of both worlds for me, Zach. It was high-level competition, but it was the kind of access that you get at high school events or your local recreation type of access. You're able to just do whatever you want within reason. You couldn't walk on the greens or the tees. That was our only limitation, honestly. So it was really terrific, and I hope we get a chance to do it again. Now, as for the competition itself, you brought up the local angle. Mark Getz, the local player who played the best. In fact, he played incredibly well in the stroke play rounds. For those unfamiliar with the U.S. Amateur, you play 36 holes, one on one course, one on the other. The other course was Longview, which is a venerable country club just down the road in Verona from Oakmont, maybe about 6 miles away, down the Allegheny toward downtown. But Verona was the course that the players lit up, for lack of a better term, especially if you got the chance to play it on that Monday. And Mark Getz did, and he took advantage of it. A couple of guys we were tracking, though, Zach, didn't do so well. Palmer Jackson of Murraysville and Notre Dame, the guy who made the run to the quarterfinals in the U.S. Amateur a couple of years ago. And also Sean Knapp playing in what I believe was his 52nd career USGA championship. He qualified, wasn't an automatic selection. He was a qualifier at age 59. Knapp from Oakmont, in fact, a couple of blocks down the road from the club is where he currently resides. He was a caddy there. The USGA highlighted his story with a social media video, so I advise you to check that out if you don't know too much about Sean Knapp, formerly of Indiana University of Pennsylvania and a Western Pennsylvania Golf Hall of Famer. So those were the primary local angles. We had 10 players with Pittsburgh ties in all competing. Only one of them, Getz, made it to the match play round, and he only lasted one round as Sweden's David Nefiall beat him in the round of 64. But neither here nor there. Zach, what's the biggest takeaway for you news-wise for me, accepting the fact that Oakmont was selected as one of the USGA's anchor sites? That's more of an outside of the realm of the competition, but that was newsworthy. We did cover it here at Pittsburgh Golf Now. I think for me, what I take away from it is just how high the level of play is for amateurs. And you and I have covered quite a bit of pro events, you more than me, but we watch a lot of pro golf. Honestly, Zach, there were only a couple of moments where I thought, oh, that looked like an amateur playing a shot, not a professional. There weren't that many instances in which I was thinking that, well, maybe a professional could have played that better or a lot better or even a little bit better, depending on the situation. With the technology being what it is, with coaching being what it is, some of these players just have everything at their fingertips. And whether you're a country club kid like Austin Greaser, the finalist, or whether you're a guy who grew up on a public course like the champion James Piot, you put all those resources to work. And that's what I take away from it, is that the level of amateur golf has never been higher. And even though Oakmont didn't surrender many birdies, it was essentially set up as a U.S. Open. There were pins 2 paces from the edge of some greens, it seemed. And you know how those greens and bunkers and well, the rough wasn't up, but even that can be very penal because of just the small landing areas that you have. That's where I'll go with the U.S. Amateur. That's what I will take away from that. What will you take away from your experience covering it?
I mean, I would agree in part with that. I also would say that because of the rain, I don't think Oakmont played as tough as it could have, although I think a combination of nerves and tougher pin placements on Sunday provided some challenges, specifically with the first 18 holes. I think you just saw a lot of nerves between the 2 finalists. But when it comes to knowledge, I think Piot was comfortable. I mean, he wasn't overly comfortable, but I think having a familiar face as his caddy, who just so happens to be Michigan State's associate head coach, who's competed in USGA championships, he was very demonstrative in a positive way towards Piot, always reaffirming, telling him, look, you know this shot, you've had this shot all week, and just providing positive affirmation. And Greaser had a familiar-ish face on the bag that I profiled as well in Carter Pitcairn, and a senior at Central Catholic. So he knew the course left and right. He has the same aspirations that Greaser had, so he was just as invested as if he was the one hitting the shots as well. So having that knowledge was very, very interesting. And I think it still was newsworthy that even though, you know, the local angle didn't proceed, you couldn't have told by the gallery. I mean, it was at least 1,000 or so deep, and it was a very respectful gallery that was anxious, that included so much entourage, whether it be college teammates, players, families, friends, girlfriends, whatever the case may be. And that made it a very interesting dynamic where you're walking as a fan or as a media member in our case, and anytime you stop, you're got at least a dozen or so of the supporting entourage from one of the players' sides. So you have everybody that's fully invested. And it was interesting seeing a couple of familiar faces that I've seen along the media and seeing how they've covered the event. And I mean, their approach to it, it was very much like you said, it was very much they were treating it like a major and everything else. And the way that the one really, really good thing about this event is that there's so many stories, and everybody has a story that's waiting to be told. And that's what makes it so interesting. You have 300 such players, and they all have a story. You had 64 players, they all have a story. I mean, even when he missed the cut, Palmer Jackson was still out there on the course supporting his teammate in the match play. I believe his name was Davis Chatterfield, if I remember correctly?
Chatfield, yeah.
Chatfield. Okay, I was close. You know what? There's 300 and something names to remember. I'm sorry, Palmer, and I'm sorry to Mr. Chatfield. But regardless of that, seeing these guys wanting to come back out even after the course physically and mentally beat them up, just wanting to support each other, that makes it fun too. And some players stuck around to see things as well. I mean, you never know. They may never play a course as venerable as Oakmont ever again. This might be it, and such are the perils of amateur golf. But regardless of that, there's so many stories to be taken away from me. I'm interested to see what these two decide to do, these two meaning Piot and Greaser, and how they decide to proceed forward. I'm sure collegiately or professionally they have plans, but who knows to see if these results positively affirm those or if they decide to change their minds. But as a whole, this week, putting a bow on things, it was a very, very interesting week, a fascinating week, and hopefully we get to do this again someday.
It's worth noting the PGA Tour does make it a bit easier for graduating college seniors or fifth years, as it were, with that PGA Tour U program. I was talking with one of James Piot's friends in the fairway. I think it was the 4th hole of the morning 18 on Sunday. And he said that the plan was always to go back to school for him, regardless of outcome in the amateur, and then take advantage of that, get some exemptions, and hopefully perform well in those PGA Tour exemptions. So maybe you don't have to excuse me, play as many Korn Ferry Tour events coming up. Maybe you don't even have to go to the finals if things go really well. I'm not sure either one of those players is going to have the impact of immediate impact of, say, a Matthew Wolff, or certainly not a Colin Morikawa, who was almost a can't miss kid coming out of Cal a couple of years ago and has delivered on that promise. But like I said, I think these college players are as well suited as ever to come out and compete, whether it be on the Korn Ferry or if they're fortunate enough on the PGA Tour. So yeah, we'll follow those names. We learned a lot of names. I just liked it from the educational standpoint too. We picked up some info on a lot of guys, not just local, but national stage type of players that we'll be watching and hopefully seeing on the biggest stage coming up. Speaking of that, we haven't done a show in about a month, Zach. So for our third shot here, as we get on the green on the PGN Par 4, let's talk about the Olympic Games. Both men and women for the second consecutive Olympiad. Delayed by 1 year, of course, but they got back out on the course, and we saw what I thought was a pretty compelling competition on both sides. And we had the huge playoff for the bronze medal on the men's side, in addition to Morikawa collecting the gold in the land of his ancestors. So, or pardon me, Xander Schauffele, excuse me, Schauffele. Morikawa was in the bronze medal playoff. And then we saw on the women's side, again, Nelly Korda continues the summer of Nelly for sure, as she just keeps rolling on. We'll see how she does in the Women's British Open, but it's already belonged to her this golf season on the ladies' side. So once again, Zach, it was 72 holes of stroke play, and I understand why the IOC wants that. They typically go to these governing bodies of sport when they add these new sports, and they say, how do you determine your best player? And so the International Golf Federation told them what we already know. We watch a lot of golf. It's mostly stroke play. I think that stroke play is fine in this case. You identify the best golfer that way more often than not. But at the same time, I feel like, for instance, in swimming, where you have all these relays, you have different competitions. They even had a cross-gender medley this year in the pool. I think you can do something like that to have some sort of a team aspect to the competition. And as long as you ensure that each country that participates has at least two, you could make it maybe not necessarily an alternate shot or anything like that, but you could go better ball while also simultaneously doing an individual stroke play event. So those are my thoughts on that. I wouldn't mind seeing a tweak. I love seeing golf in the Olympics. I think even a guy like Rory McIlroy, who came in pretty jaded on the whole thing, definitely picked up some appreciation for the whole experience. So that can only bode well for golf in the future as we look ahead to what, Paris in 4 years and then Los Angeles in 8. I'm excited about that, anticipating how golf in the Olympics can develop. At the same time, though, I think it does need a little bit of a boost. So I would try to add something to the individual stroke play. What are your feelings on watching now the second time through for golf in the Olympics in the modern era?
It's flat. There's just until Sunday comes, there's no excitement. I can't get into it. And even then, when it's a playoff, you're going, okay, maybe it's jaded because I just saw the AM, but why can't you do a Monday and Tuesday round and then either lower it down or just reseed the match play based on that? And at least it's something different, where maybe the course can't really give too much in terms of looks, and at least there's a little bit more excitement where maybe you're going to get two of your a countryman versus a countryman, but at least someone's going to propel forward, and at least there's going to be something interesting, where if you have 32 or 64 guys, that's not really too big of an ask. And we saw the USGA made up everything with rain-logged Oakmont throughout the week. I think it's doable, assuming that everything goes on with the protocols, but doing that back-to-back, I think that helps a lot more. It's less divots on the ground for the women for the second week as well, if you want to look at that aspect of it as well. But I think if you're looking for something exciting, I think match play provides that opportunity. And you said it yourself. We both mentioned it multiple times on these par fours that there needs to be something different besides stroke play. And I think we've tried team play, and I don't think enough of those top guys are invested. And if you do that, then you might get some funky pairings where gelling becomes an issue. I think if you want to do that, and if you want to make it team, then you could do a team, a stroke play, or a better ball, or in an alternate shot, and then go straight into match play and just do it that way, and then go about it that way. And if you really want to make it a technicality, the better seed can choose which format they prefer to play and make the stroke play mean something a little bit more, where they're grinding over each shot even on Monday and Tuesday. where you get a true champion. So either way, for me, I think match play is the answer. It's something different. It's something fresh. And I think it's something that everybody can get behind. But I think, you have Old Faithful. And when you're seeing Old Faithful every single week, you don't necessarily want to rock the boat. Sometimes that's just a tough thing to overcome.
I like that, a U.S. amateur type of approach. A couple of rounds of stroke play and then do match play from then on out. Then you can also say you have a gold medal match and a bronze medal match too, and play it out that way. So that's definitely an option as well. I still want to see teams in some form or fashion, just because that's the spirit of the Olympic Games, to see countries competing together, not just against each other, but also joining together. So you can award an extra gold, silver, and bronze there too. All right, quick one for our fourth shot as we tap in for par. Along those lines, we saw maybe the biggest celebration I've ever seen, Zach, before the final shot went in the hole, before the final putt went in the hole. If you haven't seen it, search Champions Tour on Twitter. Doug Barron won his second career PGA Champions event at the Shaw Classic in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And he lags the putt up to the hole, which ends up being a 6-incher, basically, for the win. So he's pumping both fists. He's jumping around. Then he makes the putt. And Zach, no exaggeration, I've not seen a celebration like this in golf, maybe ever. Kind of like a scene from Happy Gilmore, or maybe something Will Ferrell would dream up in one of his movies. He's chest bumping his caddy, prancing around the green, as Golf Digest put it. You just have to watch it. That's all there is to it. He's just yelling and screaming, running off the green. He's trying to sign balls for a couple of kids. He drops the balls out of his pocket, screams, "I love Canada." It's really something. So again, Doug Barron, Barron. Zach, the only comparable I could think of was maybe the 1999 Ryder Cup when Justin Leonard sinks that bomb of a putt. And by the way, that didn't mean it was over either. So there's some parallels as well to this one. But as far as over-the-top golf celebrations, we don't see a ton of them. It's usually pretty classy. In this case, I love seeing the raw emotion from Barron, who doesn't even have his own Wikipedia page, but now has 2 wins on the Champions Tour.
Well, certainly, and I'm the one that actually showed you the video in the.
Yeah, while I was editing stories, at the Amateur.
Yeah, really quickly, I mean, between him and Chesson Hadley getting the hole-in-one for the $1 million.
Yeah, that was good too.
It was a good week for celebration. It almost made me think about my best celebration over a moment, which was nothing. So there we go. It's good to see success, and it's good to see guys happy for success. I mean, happiness hasn't been easy to come by in golf for the last 12 or so months, so it's good on them. It's good to make the game feel lighter. And I mean, it's not showboating. It's just players genuinely happy for themselves. And in a time where it's easy to beat ourselves up, so it's good to see some levity.
Yeah, like I said, it's hard for me to describe. You've got to go check it out. And we'll finish on that one. I guess whenever one of us gets our first hole-in-one, Zach, we'll have to bust out something that rivals that. Yeah, also look at Chesson Hadley, because that was something for a PGA Tour pro. His first hole-in-one in competition, talk about going buck wild. It was quite the jump, but he compared to a baby giraffe with Amanda Balionis after the round when he talked on CBS broadcast from the Wyndham Championship last week. All right. Thank you so much for watching the PGN Par 4. More content coming at you on Pittsburgh Golf Now. Of course, the amateur's over, but we're going to shift gears back to the local scene, courses we can play, basically, and more gear reviews, things of that nature coming up. Golf season is far from over, certainly, as we move on to the final stages of August. PGA Tour playoffs in effect. And remember, Ryder Cup next month, too, in addition to the Women's British Open that I mentioned is this weekend as well. So a lot to look forward to, for sure. And we'll talk to you next time about some of that on the PGN Par 4.
And good luck to everybody at the Moon Open this weekend.
Me and Alex are playing, yeah. Have to see how he bounces back from his performance at the City Amateur. So we're on to the Moon Open at Moon Golf Club.